Welcome to Just Ecology. So today I'm up in Mount Macedon and we're at pretty high elevation here. It's around 1,000 meters above sea level. And we're going to look at some really interesting montane communities. And this is where we get patches of plants that are that really like the kind of cooler conditions, and particularly these snow gum woodlands we get up on Mount Macedon, which are generally really rare in this region, but once we get up here at the higher elevation where it's quite cool, we tend to get very different plant species, including whole forests and woodlands of things like alpine ash and snow gum trees. So walking through here a stand of snow gums, and you might notice that all of the trees are quite small and they're all similar age. That's because this area was all affected by the 1983 Ash Wednesday fires, and that killed a lot of the older snow gums, and we had a mass regeneration at that time. So all these trees are all about the same age, around 40 years old. You can see it's quite a lush forest, particularly for this part of Victoria, where nearby at lower elevation you get much more open vegetation, whereas up here you get lots of ferns, really dense grass, and that's kind of classic of these montane conditions. So montane is when you get a lot of moisture and cloud cover even throughout a lot of the day, through particularly winter and spring. You'll get really high humidity and cloud cover in these forests, and that constant moisture is really great for things like mosses and for this high plant cover. So you get a really distinct feel in the montane woodlands and forests. So standing next to one of these beautiful snow gum trees, and what I really fascinated by the snow gums is that we mostly find them throughout the Alps, where there's usually annual snow cover throughout eastern Victoria. But then when you come to central and even very far western Victoria, going all the way to near the South Australian border, you get these scattered populations of snow gum. And often, very small stands, might be only 10, 20 trees, and usually in kind of cooler kind of locations, places like Ballarat, Daylesford, and across kind of valleys and plains going further west. Up here on Macedon, there's a much larger stand because it's got the higher elevation. This is one of the highest points along the Great Divide in central Victoria at about 1,000 meters elevation. But what this pattern generally tells us is that during the last ice age, snow gum was probably much more widespread. But then in the last 10,000 years, the climate really began to warm up, and the snow gum contracted to mostly to eastern Victoria, to the Alps, but also to surviving in these small little pockets, in these small kind of cool valleys and isolated areas where it was cool enough for it to survive. So it's really fascinating to find these kind of relics of a much cooler climate, and it's great to see them still surviving in this region. So I've just put some of the leaves and the fruit of the snow gum on this stump, quite blackened from those Ash Wednesday fires 40 years ago. What I just wanted to show you is these really distinctive leaves on the snow gum, which tell them apart from a lot of other eucalypt species. You can see there's quite a lot of parallel veins there, whereas most eucalypt leaves only have one central vein. These have those quite a few going parallel through the stem, so that's a very distinctive feature of the snow gum leaves. And these lovely cup fruit is also very kind of characteristic of the snow gum. When you're identifying eucalypts, often what we're looking at is not just the bark, but looking at the buds and the fruit, which are all quite different. Do get some similarities, but these are generally on the snow gum kind of cup shape and quite large for our local eucalypt. So this is one of my favourite places on the mountain. It's on the west side where it's quite exposed to sun, to the hot afternoon sun, and it's also quite rocky. And because of that, you only get kind of scattered trees. You can see some kind of sparse snow gums growing. A lot of them have died back. They tend to grow for a few years in good conditions, but as soon as a drought comes along, you get a lot of dieback of the trees. And what that has actually done is create a bit of an open grassland. So this is what we call a montane grassland or grassy woodland community, and it's about the only place you'll see that in all of Greater Melbourne. It's extremely rare, and you also get lots of really special plants through this area. Being quite rocky and high up, it hasn't had as much grazing, so there's a lot of species that might have been lost from the surrounding plains, but you get up in these conditions, as well as those that really like the cooler conditions and can handle frost and even snow, occasional snow up here. So here we have the beautiful purple eyebright. It's become a really rare species. This is about the only place you can now find it in the whole of the Greater Melbourne area. Even in a lot of southern Victoria, it's hard to find these eyebrights now. Like a lot of species, it was quite tasty to stock, so it's been grazed out from a lot of it where it used to occur. But up here on Mount Macedon, we get this really rocky cover and good moisture. It's managed to survive. So it's really great to see this one in some pretty good numbers up here, and it's a beautiful little species. Another example of one of the rare mountain endemics you get up on Mount Macedon is this dwarf silver wattle. So you might be familiar with the more common Acacia dilbata silver wattle you get down on the lowlands, and this one's Acacia nano dilbata. You can see it's got these much smaller leaves. Those leaves that are across the main stem are called leaflets, and they're much smaller and quite close together compared to the normal silver wattle, the Acacia dilbata. And this species is really rare in this region, but as soon as you come up Mount Macedon, where the conditions are right, there's thousands of plants up here. You can see it's finished flowering, and the seeds have developed. The pods are split open there, and you can see the black seeds. So a lot of acacias, they have these little attachments on the seed called an aril. You might see that just next to the black part of the seed. That little attachment, the aril, is to attract things like ants. It's actually a bit of a sugary substance that they can forage on. So that encourages the ants to pick up the seed and take it back towards their nest. And in the process, they're dispersing the seeds, and they'll eat the aril and just leave the seed behind. Those seeds can then survive in the ground for many decades. You can see they've got quite a hard coat, and often after a disturbance event, something like fire that cracks the seed coat, you'll get mass germination of these acacias. So that's the beautiful dwarf silver wattle. Here we have a Brachyscome diversifolia, one of our native daisies. The daisies are the most diverse family of plants in the world, and this is the kind of classic flower shape you get of the daisies, with what we call the ligules on the outside, the white parts. They're actually not the main part of the flower. The main part of the flower is the yellow part. You've got lots of individual flowers within the main, you might call one flower, but there's actually many flowers within that yellow part, and each of those can actually produce a seed once they've been pollinated. So this is a classic kind of daisy shape. So you can get species from other continents that look very similar to this one, but this is one of the more rare native daisies that prefers to grow in the wet spring soaks up on Mount Macedon. And it's another classic one that is, because it's quite tall, it is susceptible to grazing, has been lost from a lot of the surrounding plains. But up here amongst the rocks, with nice cool conditions, it's a perfect place for it to grow. And there's a large population here in the montane grassy woodland or grassland. So these montane forests also really important habitat for a lot of our native fauna. And just as it's a bit of a refuge for kind of montane plant species, you get some really interesting animals up here that we don't get on the surrounding lower plains. Just recently there was dusky antechinus, a species really uncommon in this region, was discovered up here, which really loves this denser vegetation you get up here, lots of the bracken and the grassy habitat's really good for the dusky antechinus. And another really notable habitat is for butterflies, because a lot of butterfly species like higher areas. They do this thing called hilltopping, where they'll actually find a higher point in the landscape to go and congregate to mate. So Mount Macedon is very cool in winter, but in summer, on a nice hot day, you get these peaks and rises on the mountain which attract a lot of different butterfly species. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Just Ecology. We'll be back with more videos exploring the fascinating ecology of southeastern Australia. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe or like below and share with your friends. Thanks and have a great day.